The shocking truth behind evil, who really created it. In the beginning, the world was formed from the light of God, a creation of beauty, order, and peace. But hidden in the depths of this divine order lies a question so disturbing it's been concealed for millennia. If God is good, then who created evil? Isaiah 45:7 tells us, I form the light and create darkness. I make peace and create evil. But how could this be? How could the creator of all that is good also be the creator of darkness? Why has this truth been veiled for so long? For thousands of years, this question has echoed through sacred halls, whispered among prophets, and pondered by theologians. Was evil a result of human free will, a choice made by fallen beings? Or was it something more, something darker, pre-existing before man ever walked the earth? Can we even begin to comprehend the depths of God's plan for allowing such a paradox to exist? In this video, we will unravel the age-old mystery. We will dive deep into the verses of Isaiah and Genesis, peeling back the layers of divine sovereignty and free will, and examine the fall of Lucifer, the first rebellion, and the subtle ways in which evil creeps into creation. By the end of this journey, you'll see that the battle between light and darkness is not just one of cosmic proportions, but one that takes place within each of us. The question remains, if God allowed evil, what does that mean for us, His creation? Will you choose to walk in the light, or will you surrender to the shadow? As we uncover these truths, I encourage you to reflect. Do you believe that the Creator truly reigns over both good and evil? Or has there been something concealed from us for far too long? Let your thoughts flow in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this exploration of the divine paradox. Your journey through this ancient mystery is about to begin. The mystery of Isaiah 45:7. Why did God create evil? In the scriptures, there is a verse that unsettles us, challenges us, and demands our full attention. Isaiah 45:7 boldly declares, I form the light and create darkness. I make peace and create evil. I, the Lord, do all these things. These words are not the words of a prophet or an angel, but of God Himself. How can this be? How can the creator of all that is good also be the creator of evil? The thought is jarring, and for centuries, theologians have wrestled with this paradox, trying to reconcile the undeniable truth that God is good, yet also the source of the darkness that we fear. To understand this verse, we must first look at the meaning of the Hebrew word ra, which is translated as evil. In modern translations, we often see it softened as calamity, disaster, or harm, but in its original form, Re is a multifaceted term that encompasses adversity, wickedness, sorrow, and disaster. It's not simply sin, but the suffering and hardship that come with living in a broken world. It's important to realize that God is not the creator of evil in the sense of moral wickedness. Instead, He created the conditions under which evil could exist. Freedom of choice. Think of the story of the Garden of Eden. God created Adam and Eve in His image, and with that came the gift of free will, the ability to choose love, to choose goodness, or to choose something else. In giving them this gift, God allowed the possibility for evil to enter the world, not as a force He created, but as something that could emerge when His creations, endowed with the free will to love Him or turn away, made the choice to rebel. This is the essential tension we find in Isaiah 45:7. It's not that God actively created moral evil, but rather He created a world where free will could lead to both good and evil. And this paradox calls us to question, if God gave us the freedom to choose, then is evil a necessary consequence of free will? Perhaps in the grand mystery of God's design, the allowance of evil serves a greater purpose, to demonstrate the profound love and justice of God, which can only be experienced when the choice to love is freely given. The key lesson here is that God's sovereignty does not negate human responsibility. He is sovereign over all creation, even the presence of evil. But the evil that enters the world is a result of human choices, the abuse of free will, and the turning away from his perfect will. God did not force his love upon Adam and Eve. He did not compel them to obey, and in that freedom the possibility of rebellion was born. It is through this freedom that we understand love, grace, and redemption. Evil as a presence versus a choice. Evil, a presence that exists or a choice made. Evil, as we see in the world today, is not merely a presence. It's a distortion, a choice made by beings with the free will to follow God or turn away. In the heavenly realms, we see the story of Lucifer, once a perfect angel, who chose to exalt himself above God. His rebellion was not born of hatred or malice, but of pride and ambition. He desired to be like God, to rise above his throne, and in that desire, evil was birthed. The story of Lucifer's fall is found in Isaiah 14:12-14, where the day star says, "I will ascend to heaven, I will raise my throne above the stars of God, I will make myself like the Most High." Lucifer's pride was not a violent rebellion, but a quiet internal shift, a decision to turn inward and seek glory for himself rather than for God. It was in this turning away from God's perfect order that evil began to take root. This is the heart of all evil, the choice to turn from God's love and seek one's own will. And so it is with us. The evil we encounter in our world is not a cosmic force that invades our lives. It is a distortion of the good, a misuse of free will. Like Lucifer, we are faced daily with choices, to align ourselves with the Creator or to chase after our own desires. And in those moments of choice, we determine whether we will live in the light of God's will or in the shadow of our own pride. The story of Adam and Eve is a poignant example. When they were tempted by the serpent in the garden, the choice they faced was not simply a matter of eating fruit from the tree. It was a choice to elevate their own desires above God's command. "You will be like God," the serpent whispered, and in that moment, the choice for self-exaltation was made. The result was the introduction of evil, not as a force imposed upon them, but as a consequence of their choice. Evil, then, is not an external force that invades us. It is the result of internal choices, the consequences of our rebellion against God's perfect will. We must choose to walk in the light, to follow God's command, and to align ourselves with his purposes. When we do, we step into the freedom he offers, a freedom that is not just the ability to choose, but the ability to choose the good, to choose love, and to choose the path of righteousness. Genesis 1:2, darkness before light, the aftermath of a cosmic fall. In the opening verses of Genesis, we encounter a moment of profound silence. The earth was formless and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep. Genesis chapter 1:2. This verse speaks of something deeper than mere emptiness. It describes a profound desolation, a chaotic state that had existed before creation began. But what if this darkness is not simply the absence of light, but the aftermath of something far greater, a cosmic battle, a fall, a rebellion that took place long before the earth was shaped? The phrase tohu vabohu used here in Hebrew suggests more than just an unshaped world. It speaks of destruction, a wasteland. Some theologians propose that between Genesis 1:1, where God creates the heavens and the earth, and Genesis 1:2, a cataclysm occurred, a fall of cosmic proportions that predated the creation of our world. The darkness was not simply a void, but a remnant of something broken. This could be seen as the aftermath of a celestial rebellion, a war in heaven that had already taken place. The darkness in Genesis chapter 1-2, then, may represent the consequences of that rebellion. The story of Lucifer's fall, as described in Isaiah 14:12-15 and Ezekiel 28:12-17, hints at this celestial conflict. Lucifer, a being created perfect in beauty and wisdom, rebelled against God. His desire was not to destroy God, but to be like God, to elevate himself above his Creator. This pride, this desire to usurp God's throne, led to his downfall. And as Lucifer fell, he took with him a third of the heavenly hosts, angels who, too, chose rebellion over the Creator. This fall could very well have been the event that left the earth in a state of desolation, a shadow of what had once been a perfect creation. When we look at the darkness described in Genesis 1:2, we see not just a state of nothingness, but the traces of a war that took place long before humanity existed. The darkness was not a mere absence of light, but a brokenness that needed to be restored. And God, in his infinite wisdom and mercy, spoke the words, "Let there be light." Genesis chapter 1:3, interrupting the chaos with his divine order. The light was not just the first step in creation. It was a declaration of victory, a reassertion of divine sovereignty over the darkness that had once reigned. In our own lives, we may often encounter moments that feel like the aftermath of a cosmic fall, moments of despair, confusion, and darkness. We may wonder, as many have, why such darkness exists in the first place. Why does God allow these moments of chaos to persist? The answer lies in the fact that light cannot be fully understood without darkness. Just as God spoke light into the void of the earth, he speaks light into the dark moments of our lives, reminding us that no matter how deep the darkness, his light is more powerful. It interrupts the chaos and reorders our lives. The fall of Lucifer. How evil began. The fall of Lucifer is the origin story of evil. Lucifer, once a perfect and beautiful being, created by God to reflect his glory, chose to rebel. In Isaiah 14:12-14, we read of his prideful declaration, "I will ascend to heaven. I will raise my throne above the stars of God. I will make myself like the Most High." Lucifer's sin was not born of hatred, but of pride, the desire to be like God, to exalt himself to the position of the Creator. His fall was not an act of violent opposition to God, but a quiet, internal rebellion, a turning inward to seek his own glory. This is the essence of evil, the desire to turn away from God's perfect will and to seek self-exaltation. Lucifer's rebellion wasn't the result of external forces. It came from within him. It was a distortion of the good, the beauty, wisdom, and perfection that had been given to him by God. In his desire to be like God, Lucifer became the first being to turn away from divine order and perfect harmony, and in doing so, he introduced evil into creation. What we learn from the fall of Lucifer is that evil does not exist outside of God's creation. It is not an independent force, but a distortion of the good. Evil begins when we, like Lucifer, turn inward, seeking our own glory instead of reflecting the glory of God. In our own lives, we often encounter moments where pride, ambition, or self-centeredness cause us to stray from God's perfect will. The question we must ask ourselves is, are we seeking our own glory, or are we reflecting the glory of God in our lives? The story of Lucifer teaches us a critical lesson. Evil begins in the heart. It begins when we choose to elevate ourselves above God, when we seek our own will over His. In many ways, we face this choice every day. The choice to put ourselves first, to follow our own desires, or to surrender to God's will and reflect His glory. And just as Lucifer's fall brought darkness into the world, our choices to follow our own will can lead us into darkness as well. But as the Bible teaches us, even in the midst of this darkness, there is hope. Just as God brought light into the void, He offers us the light of His salvation through Jesus Christ. Evil may have entered the world through Lucifer's pride, but it was defeated at the cross. What Satan intended for destruction, God used for redemption. Through Jesus' sacrifice, the power of evil was broken. What was meant to tear apart God's creation became the means by which God restored it. In the end, evil does not have the final word. God does, and He has promised that His light will overcome the darkness. As we reflect on the fall of Lucifer, let us remember that evil is not a force that exists apart from us, but a distortion that begins in our hearts. It begins when we choose to turn away from God and seek our own glory. But God, in His mercy and grace, offers us a way back to Him through the light of Jesus Christ. The lesson is clear. We must guard our hearts against pride and self-exaltation, and choose instead to reflect the glory of God in all that we do. By doing so, we overcome the darkness and walk in the light of His love. Free will, the power of choice, and the origin of evil. The gift of free will is one of the greatest blessings bestowed upon humanity by God. It is a divine act of love, the freedom to choose, to decide our own path. But this very gift also carries the weight of responsibility. The same free will that allows us to choose love, joy, and peace also makes room for the existence of evil. God did not create evil, but He created a world where evil could exist, because without the possibility of choice, love would be meaningless. Free will is central to the story of humanity. In the Garden of Eden, God gave Adam and Eve the freedom to choose, to obey His commands, or to follow their own desires. The tree of knowledge of good and evil stood as a symbol of that choice. In Genesis 2:16-17, God commanded Adam not to eat from the tree, for the day that you eat of it, you shall surely die. But God did not force Adam and Eve to obey. He gave them the freedom to choose, knowing full well that this freedom would make their love for Him real, not coerced. The story of their fall demonstrates the danger and the beauty of free will. When the serpent tempted Eve, he did not force her to eat the fruit. He simply offered her the choice. "You will not surely die," he said, "for God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." Genesis 3:4-5. Eve's choice to eat the fruit was not an act of ignorance, but a decision to follow her own will over God's. She desired the knowledge and power that the serpent promised, and in that moment, evil entered the world. Evil is the consequence of the abuse of free will. It is not a force that invades us, but a choice we make when we turn away from God's perfect will. It begins in the heart, in the desire for something other than God's best for us. When we choose our own desires over God's commands, we invite evil into our lives. The consequences of this choice are far-reaching, as we see in the story of Adam and Eve, who were cast out of the garden, separated from the presence of God. Yet even in this moment of rebellion, there was hope. God did not abandon them. He promised a Redeemer who would one day crush the serpent's head and restore what was lost. Genesis 3:15. The lesson here is profound. Free will is both a gift and a responsibility. It is a gift because it allows us to choose love, to choose God, to choose life. But it is also a responsibility because with that choice comes the possibility of evil. We must guard our hearts and our choices, for each decision we make has the power to lead us closer to God or further away from Him. But even when we make the wrong choice, there is hope. God, in His grace, offers forgiveness and the opportunity to choose again. He does not abandon us when we stray. He calls us back to him, offering his light in the midst of darkness. The cross, the victory over evil through sacrifice. The ultimate battle between light and darkness, good and evil, was fought and won on the cross of Calvary. What began as the darkest moment in human history, the betrayal, torture, and crucifixion of the Son of God, became the very means by which evil was defeated. The cross stands as the greatest paradox of all. Through suffering, death, and apparent defeat, God triumphed over the powers of darkness. In the hours leading up to his crucifixion, Jesus faced unimaginable pain and rejection. He was betrayed by one of his closest followers, abandoned by his disciples, and mocked by the very people he came to save. Yet in the midst of this suffering, Jesus made a declaration that would change the course of history. "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." Luke 23:34. Even in his darkest hour, Jesus chose love, mercy, and forgiveness over retaliation. He did not fight back with violence, but surrendered to the will of the Father, trusting that his sacrifice would bring redemption to the world. Through his death on the cross, Jesus took upon himself the weight of humanity's sin, the full extent of the evil that had entered the world through the choices of Adam and Eve, through the pride of Lucifer, through every act of rebellion against God's perfect will. But the story does not end in death. On the third day, Jesus rose from the dead, conquering not only sin and death, but also the very powers of evil that had held humanity captive. In his resurrection, Jesus demonstrated that evil, though it may seem powerful, is ultimately powerless in the face of God's love and grace. The cross was not a defeat, it was the victory. In the words of Colossians 2:15, having disarmed the powers and authorities, he made a public spectacle of them, triumphing over them by the cross. What the enemy intended for evil, God used for good. The cross, which was meant to bring shame and destruction, became the means of salvation for all who would believe. Through his sacrifice, Jesus broke the power of evil, setting us free from its grip. The cross is a reminder that God does not shy away from the darkness. He entered it willingly, allowing himself to be swallowed up by it in order to overcome it. And in doing so, he invites us to follow him in his victory. When we face the darkness in our own lives, the evil that seeks to destroy us, the sin that entangles us, we can look to the cross and remember that it has already been defeated. Evil does not have the final say. God's love and grace are more powerful than any force of darkness. The lesson of the cross is this: evil may rage, but it has already been overcome. Through Jesus' sacrifice, we are more than conquerors. The enemy may still try to tempt, deceive, and destroy, but we can stand firm in the victory of Christ. The cross is the ultimate proof that love is stronger than hate, light is stronger than darkness, and life is stronger than death. In the face of evil, we can trust that God is at work, turning what was meant for destruction into something beautiful, the redemption of his people. As we reflect on the power of the cross, let us remember that we too are called to walk in the victory that Jesus has won for us. Just as he overcame evil through his sacrifice, we are called to overcome evil by living lives of love, mercy, and grace. Let us choose to reflect the light of Christ in a world that is still plagued by darkness, knowing that the cross has already secured our victory. As we close this journey of discovery together, I want to leave you with a thought that resonates deeply within my heart. The battle between light and darkness is not just a cosmic struggle that happened once, but it's a battle we all face within ourselves. Every day, we are presented with choices, moments where we can choose to align with God's will, or where we can stray, tempted by the fleeting promises of this world. But the good news is that even in the darkest moments, we are never alone. God's light has already won the victory. When you find yourself facing the shadows of doubt, fear, or temptation, remember that light was spoken into existence, and that light was made flesh in Jesus Christ. He is the light that shines even in the darkest places. His victory on the cross is not a story of defeat, but one of ultimate triumph. The cross, the very symbol of darkness and despair, was turned into the symbol of hope and redemption. And that victory is ours to claim today, tomorrow, and for all eternity. Life can be hard, and sometimes the weight of the world feels unbearable. But no matter how heavy the burden, remember that God's love is greater than any darkness we encounter. You don't have to walk through the valley alone. His light is always available to guide your steps, no matter how lost you may feel. When you feel as though you are surrounded by darkness, remember that the light of Christ is shining brighter than ever, and it is always within reach. If this video has touched your heart, if it has brought you a sense of peace or clarity, or helped you find a spark of light in the midst of your own struggles, I invite you to support this channel. Every like, every share, and every comment truly means the world to me. I want to continue bringing you content that lifts your spirit and brings you closer to the truth of God's Word. Your encouragement, no matter how small, is an invaluable part of this journey. If you feel that this message has helped you or inspired you, please take a moment to give this video a like and consider subscribing to the channel. Every small gesture you make helps me continue spreading the light and truth of the gospel to all who need to hear it. And if you feel led to, your support, even in the smallest form, will keep this work going. Know that your contributions, whether it's through your time, energy, or even your prayers, are priceless. This is more than just a video. This is a community, a place where we can come together to reflect on God's Word, share in His love, and walk in His light. I encourage you to share your thoughts in the comments below. What has been the greatest challenge you've faced in your walk with God? How have you experienced His light in moments of darkness? Your story might be the very thing that encourages someone else on their journey. Let's keep the conversation going. Let's continue to support one another, learn from each other, and most importantly, seek the light together. Thank you for being part of this family, for sharing your time and your energy, and for allowing me to be part of your journey. May God's peace fill your heart, His light guide your steps, and His love surround you always.